and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we're releasing a special episode. It has become a bit of a tradition around here, around New Year's, where I go back through some of the clips and take them from the episodes that we did earlier this year and put them together in a year in finale kind of an episode for 2025, which was an amazing year for podcasting around here. We had some amazing conversations. I have done this in the past. Like I said, this is a bit of a tradition. In the past, I've always chosen some type of a theme. Maybe it was something about nutrition, carnivore diets, or whatever it was. It could have been also some of the most popular and more downloaded episodes that we had done. This year, I have absolutely no theme. This is just me going through and finding conversations that I just remembering very fondly, conversations that I thought went really, really well, and maybe didn't get as much attention as I would have wanted them to. And so hopefully, as you're listening to some of these clips, maybe you will be interested in them and want to go check out their full episodes. So I'll be coming in and telling you where those episodes can be found in their entirety if you want to go check them out. They're in no particular order as well, besides just chronologically ordered. They're not in any type of topic order as well. So the first clip we're going to play is from Bethany McKenzie. This is the episode called Let Me Be 83, Type 1 Diabetes Control with Bethany McKenzie. This was episode 757, which we ran on January 6th, 2025. This clip just shows how challenging type 1 diabetes can be, especially for people who don't have information about low carbohydrate diets. I hope you like this one.
In preparation for talking with you, I've gone over our whole history, and I can emotionally get back to that. Like you said, we returned from a trip, and I had weighed River before we left on the trip, because in case he had like a fever while we were gone, the babysitter would know how much Tylenol to give him. So we got back, he had lost all of this weight. It was very clear something was wrong. We knew immediately he had type 1 diabetes. It's a very simple, they knew by checking his urine in the office and then transferring us to the hospital. My story is different than most, or a little unique, in that I come from a long line of doctors. My dad's a doctor, my brother's a doctor, my husband's a doctor, several in-laws are physicians. I grew up absolutely trusting every word a physician said to me. I had no reason not to. I lived with them. I saw their caring heart. I knew about their training, their long hours, how intelligent these doctors are. So when we were in the hospital and they told us the diagnosis, I'm a doer, right? I love this kid and I'm a doer and I'm going to figure this out. And I'm a smart girl. Math is my strong suit. And when they told me to apply a mathematical ratio to figure out a dose and count these carbs, I was going to be the very best person at that job. Like I do all. I'm doing it. I'm committing to it. And they taught me the math part first, and then they brought me to the dietitian. And in that room, they have those little plastic fake foods. And we had to do a mock-up breakfast for my son. And she placed 2 pancakes down and a 1/4 cup of fake plastic syrup and a big glass of orange juice. And my husband said he watched my face just drop. Something within me knew what I was being taught wasn't right. However, I believe these people. I know that doctors do the right thing. It was such a conflict within my mind that something didn't feel right, but I'm a pleasant Midwestern woman. I'm going to do as I'm told. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to count those carbohydrates like it's my absolute job. Excuse me. So when we left the hospital, I took them at their word. I did exactly what they said. And our life was chaos. You know, at first, the emotions don't sink in because you are literally just trying to adapt to this new way of life and keep your child alive, and you're up at night. And then after about a year or two, like it was starting to affect us personally. Like my flame was being muted. I lost my personality to this disease that took over. And my kids are busy kids. At that time, they went to a immersion school and did classical guitar and played tennis and were busy, and we had this other thing, and it just took over our lives. And so about 3 years into his diagnosis, unlike most of the people you've probably interviewed who Googled and found a book right away and made the transition in their life right away, it took me 3 years. So when I speak to our audience about knowing what it was like to be high carb, we had 3 years of very high carb, like very standard American diet, high carb. But I was on social media one day and we had hit rock bottom. We left town one time in those 3 years and had a babysitter come watch River. I took my parents to the Adele concert and we hired a medical student and a paramedic. They were married to watch River. And I gave them all the instructions. They're very, very capable people. And a dose of insulin got missed. It happens, right? They took him to the pool. They ordered a cheeseburger and French fries, forgot to give an insulin dose. And I'm sitting in the Adele concert and I'm watching his CGM climb and climb and climb and climb. You know, then it's reading high with an arrow across and I'm 4 hours away. And so this is the cycle you see parents do. Then we're giving insulin and we're giving more insulin. We're giving more insulin. And he's starting to come down and I'm still in the Adele concert. And then his CGM takes the turn for the worse and starts dropping straight down. My point in telling you this is that was my absolute rock bottom. I was away from him. I was panicking. I was in a show concert that I wasn't enjoying. And on our drive home from Minneapolis, which is 4 hours away from where I live, I posted in just a Dexcom Facebook group. And I had never been the type of person to seek help on the internet. I go to doctors, right? I'm a trusting woman. I use them as my resource. But for the first time, I reached out on the internet and said, how are you people doing this? I see some of you with these normal blood sugars. And back then it was pretty taboo to talk about. And I made people would comment, we use a CGM. Well, yes, we do too. We pre-bolus for our food, which means dosing like 20 minutes ahead of eating. Yes, we do too. We have a diabetes alert dog. We do too. Like all of the things. And then every 5th, 7th, 10th comment, someone would say, we eat a low carb diet. And then the comments, we use a dog, we use a pre-bolus, we use a low carb diet. And this is the first time I'd ever heard of this in 3 years of having diabetes. First time I'd ever heard that, whoa, wait a minute. You don't have to do the quarter cup of syrup and the big glass of orange juice to justify the insulin dose. And so within those comments, they recommended the book. I ordered it on the drive home. I go back in my Amazon history and it's right there. I ordered the book on July 5th, came home. And once I knew better, even just people telling me that comment, I could never look back. We went home. My kitchen was under construction and we quit carbs cold turkey because that's what we do. Like when we knew that was better for him, we implemented it immediately. And it was so life-changing from the first meal. I mean, I remember I gave him eggs and bacon, typical, like normal breakfast foods. And I couldn't believe there was no crazy blood sugar spike. And I posted it in this new group, Type 1 Grit, that I had been welcomed into because I bought and read the book. And they're like, oh yeah, that's super normal. Like it was 80 and flat. And I just had never seen something like that. And the joy that comes from the peace, but also the anger, like I was so duped. Someone kept the truth from me. I was viciously angry. And so we had an endocrinology appointment coming up right after that. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to go tell them about this because certainly they haven't heard. Otherwise they would have told me. Like truly, I was that like giddy skipping in there. I can't wait to tell them. And I got the typical right in front of my 8-year-old at the time. The doctor said, this is not sustainable. He will resent you for the rest of his life. You know, and I'm sure you've heard with other guests, he won't grow, his brain won't develop, all of the things. It wasn't going to stop me, but from that moment on, it was my job to make sure people knew this existed.
Did it scare you?
No. I mean, it takes courage. I think any of the people who hear that their child won't grow or their brain won't develop, that is such a scary hurdle to overcome as a parent. But I saw the blood sugars. Like I'd already had a couple of weeks of eggs and bacon and normal blood sugars that I was able to decipher that this doctor wasn't willing to even consider this. The interesting part is he was a vegan. He ate a restrictive diet, which was sustainable for him. And he kept saying, oh, it's Atkins, meat and cheese. And it's like, I know that their training was flawed. I know that nutrition isn't covered. The part to me that's unforgivable is that there's not a curiosity from the most educated, highly trained people in society to say, well, wait a minute. Is it meat and cheese? Is that all he's eating? How are you doing this? Oh, you make pancakes with almond flour? I didn't know that. Like, let me look into this for you because I don't have any patience doing this. I've never heard of this, or I don't know about this. But I left feeling like a terrible mother, but it didn't change what I was going to do, because the joy of my child sleeping through the night and not running after him with a needle of insulin or a thing of glucose, it was just so life-changing. So
it was hard not to get emotional watching the documentary, and it's hard not to get emotional now. I can feel like my eyes clouding up a bit. It's crazy. RD said something when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he said that at some point, if you're acknowledging that your child needs to change their diet, the parent needs to kind of accept that they also have some food addiction problems that they need to acknowledge as well. But it's like, I don't know how you juggle those two things and say that, like, okay, yeah, maybe you have to change your diet, and that's going to be tough. You're going to change the diet of your family, but this is your child's life. Why would you not have that curiosity, like you said? Like,
right. Well, I mean, they scare us saying your child won't grow, their brain won't develop, right? We're going to attack literally the biggest things about raising a kid is to get them to adulthood as a grown human and making sure they're smart enough to be prepared for the world. What if, Casey, what if they said to the parent, if you don't change their diet, they might be blind by age 35. If you don't change your son's diet, he might have erectile dysfunction by the age of 30. Do you think a parent would then take that seriously? They need to scare. Complications are real. I want to have grandkids someday. If a doctor had said that to me right away, well, if a doctor had offered me dietary changes, instantly I would have chosen that route. But even if I hadn't ever heard of that or wouldn't consider it, if someone said my kid could go blind, you better believe I'm changing our diets. They underplay the complications, especially in a pediatric office, because those doctors only see patients until they're 18. Most kids won't have a complication by age 18, but my husband's an orthopedic surgeon. He sees people in their 20s who need amputations or who have neuropathy. So we can't do this mystical, magical thinking that complications don't exist in children. They are brewing, and it's important.
This next clip is taken from an episode that we did with Dr. Ben Bokikio, one of my really, really good friends. This episode is called A Smart Plan for the New Year with returning guest Dr. Ben Bokikio. This was episode 760, which we aired on my birthday, January 13th, 2025. Like I said, I would consider Dr. Ben a really good friend of mine. I actually got to spend quite a bit of time with him this year in San Diego. He's just an absolute legend in our space, and he still practices what he preaches. He does his own workouts every single week and still sees people all over the world to take him through his system. I thought this would be an extra good clip. Not only did I love this episode, but since it is the new year and people are thinking about how they want to be constructing their fitness plans for the new year, I figured this would be really relevant. So let's go and hear Dr. Ben Bokikio again from episode 760, released on January 13th, 2025. I was hoping that today we could create a resource for somebody who is coming up on the new year. They've got a fresh set of goals and really want to go out and accomplish those goals. What kind of framework we could help provide for them so that they can be successful and, not think they need to do it all in January, but have something that they can sustain throughout the year. I think you'd be the perfect person to discuss that with.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, this happens every year. The prodigal son, they come out. I'm going to get started, the first Monday of the new year, whatever it is, which is okay. I mean, it's a great delineation in time, and it's a great time to get started and plan to get started. We know historically that most of the people that start are off their programs within, 6 weeks at the most, and try to analyze, logically, why is that happens? And I think because the couple of reasons, the programs that they do or get involved with are usually minimally effective. Okay. Understand that anything you do relative to nothing, which a lot of people do, is nothing. They're sedentary and don't have any kind of plan. Anything you do relative to that is beneficial. But that doesn't ensure that that's a plan that you can sustain that will give you increasing progress. And I measure the efficacy or the value really of an exercise program with a few criteria. Okay. Number one is safety. Okay. If you get hurt or if it's not safe or it's physically too challenging, you're not going to do it. And it's a negative experience. Number two is efficacy. Does the plan work? Okay. So it has to work no matter what. If it's a long plan, a short plan, a hard plan, an easy plan, it has to work, or else you're not going to get positive feedback. You're not going to continue. Number three, is it efficient? In other words, can you fit this program, this lifestyle into your structure, into what you have to do to ensure you're living, and you're in your family? Okay. If not, again, that becomes just pie in the sky and it's just too hard to sustain. And is it long-term adherent? In other words, is this something you can do for the rest of your life? Because, one of my wise ass answers is people say, Dr. Ben, until what age do I have to exercise? And I say, well, I'd like you to exercise until 2 days after you die, just to make sure you're dead, So this is something that's part of human physiology. We know it, the science shows it, the behavior shows it, the study shows it, the observations show that. So how do I engage in the things that are going to create a long, productive, vigorous life and be rational in as far as our time allotment and commitment? So the two biggest levers we have, and all of the data shows this, overwhelmingly, are diet and exercise. If we can organize our diet, and that is what we eat, and an exercise program, what we do physically, how we demand it, and how we structure it, then we're 80% of the way to probably the most progressive, intricate longevity program that money could buy. And some people do spend $10,000 or more per month, if they have enough money, trying to get involved in longevity programs. And 80% of their program is diet and exercise. So save yourself $100,000 and just get involved in something you can actually do. So that's what I try to teach. And I'm not so steeped in hubris, in my own listen to myself talk, that I'm saying this is the only way you can do it. Obviously, there are plenty of ways to do it, but I would put this system that I have up to any with regard to those items that I mentioned as far as safety and efficiency and effectiveness and long-term adherence. I think it's pretty sound, it's pretty solid, and it works for most of the people most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's where I start. And so when you're trying to get ready for the new year, and in most cases, there are general themes that run through the whole population. And in most cases, it really comes down to losing fat, gaining energy, gaining some strength and vigor, which is and improving body composition. I mean, again, there are other offshoots, and yes, philosophically, and in a forward-thinking manner, health per se is wonderful. But I think most people are driven by, cosmetics and feeling less than old, and and getting back some of their vitality and things like that. But they all go hand in hand, and a simple program can drive you towards that goal rationally, reasonably, and consistently.
This next clip is taken from an awesome conversation that I finally got to have with Dean Karnazes early in this year. This was a long time coming. This dude is so busy all over the world doing races and training for things. It was really, really tough to get in touch with him, but we've been working on getting this one recorded for many years, like I said. This episode is called The Road to Sparta with the ultra marathon man, Dean Karnazes. This was episode 797, which we aired on March 31st, 2025. And I just absolutely love his story and how he decided to tell this story, which also included the story of the first marathon. I think if you ask most people the origination of the marathon, where that came from, most people would say, yes, absolutely. It was Phidippides who ran the 26.2 miles back to Athens, and then he died. If you knew the actual story of how cool it was and what he actually accomplished, it is far cooler than what you think it is. And Dean does an amazing job sharing that story in his book, The Road to Sparta, which he released a few years ago. But I just wanted to include this conversation and this story because it's just absolutely wonderful. So here you go. Can you tell us about Phidippides, what kind of role he played in that culture? And then we'll kind of intertwine these two stories together as you do so well in your book, telling the story of ancient Greece and also telling your story of how you wanted to recapture an even greater run that he accomplished.
Yeah, Phidippides was part of a class of citizens called hemodromi, which basically means day-long runner or all-day runner. And these were basically foot heralds, and they were like the equivalent of a faster satellite service nowadays. These guys could outrun horses, and the Greeks realized that in the mountainous and warm terrain of southern Greece, a trained runner could outrun a horse. It's been proven, in modern times that this is true. But these runners could run for 8, 9, 10 longer hours, 36 hours at a time without stopping. And that was the way that the Greeks could gather intelligence from neighboring city-states, disseminate information. So they had these hemodromi in all of the city-states that were basically trained as heralds. In 490 BC, as I said, the Persians invaded Greece along the western shoreline of a peninsula called Attica, where Athens is located. And their idea was, we're going to invade Greece. We're going to overthrow this idea of democracy, which is ruled by the people, which is crazy. Like, a king needs to rule the people, not the people themselves. And when the Athenians saw the numbers, which were about 100 to 200,000 Persians versus about 10,000 fighting Athenians, they realized they were going to get their asses kicked. So if you've seen the movie 300, who's the most badass fighting force in ancient Greece? The Spartans. So the idea was for the Athenians to recruit the Spartans into battle to help them fight off the Persians. There was just one small, caveat to that. The distance between Athens and Sparta is about 140 to 150 miles, depending on the route you take. And they had to send this foot messenger, Phidippides, to run there. The history records show him arriving the day after setting out, which can roughly be interpreted as minus 36 hours, sub 36 hours. So somehow in 490 BC, this is before there's any sort of GPS navigation. This is before there's any sort of headlight, to run on a trail. This is before Nike invented, their Vaporfly 4% or whatever, their shoe that can, defy gravity. This guy was sent to run from Athens to Sparta, and he somehow pulled it off.
Wow. So
that's the basis of the story. Yeah.
That's incredible. How many rest stops were there along the way where he could fill up on a quick drink of water and grab an energy bar?
Yeah, that's a good teaser. I mean, there were none, obviously. There weren't cheering fans along the way. I mean, he had to forage for food. He probably carried like a bladder, a goat bladder where he could keep water in there. But other than that, he probably had this paste called pastille, which is ground up sesame seeds and honey. That was what the ancient athletes used to use for fuel. But beyond that, obviously there's no power bar. There's no goo energy gel. There's nothing like that. So how he did this and how he did it in such a remarkable time, even by modern standards, it's remarkable. It was fascinating to me.
It's so.
So I thought I got to try this. I got to try what he did.
That's incredible.
And in Greece, in modern Greece, there's a race called the Spartathlon that follows the same route, somewhat the same route. I mean, it's paved over earth, a lot of it now, versus, wild trails like in 490 BC. But I thought, okay, you're going to be on asphalt, which is a little bit different than what Phidippides did. But at least try doing this race, the Spartathlon. using the foods that he used. So only have figs, only have olives, only have cured meat, only have pastilli, and only drink water. Don't drink any sort of sports, nutrition beverage or any sort of electrolyte replenishment fluid. Just try to run as he did in this modern time.
Wow. That's amazing. I can't wait to talk about this race. Let's park the Pheidippides part of the story for a minute and talk about you. Tell us about your preparation for the Spartathlon. Obviously, you said you wanted to try to do it with the natural foods that they would have had at his time, but how else were you preparing for this event? You weren't, in Greece at the time. And like you mentioned, the terrain is incredibly challenging from the way you describe it. How were you able to prepare for this incredibly long and challenging event?
Yeah, and hot event as well. It's very hot in southern Greece when they hold the event in September. So, I was living in Southern California at the time, and I would go running up in the hills and mountains as high as I could find, in a puffy North Face ski parka to, emulate some of that heat I would encounter. I also trained, for up to 12 hours of running using only figs for fuel. So I was experimenting with these ancient fuels, getting used to assimilating them in my modern body.
Wow. That's tremendous that you were able to do that. Tell us about the race itself. This is an incredibly limited race. I mean, most marathons, as people know, you can, sign up, you can access them. This one seems much, much more difficult to get into.
Yeah, I mean, there's really strict qualifying standards to get accepted, and there's also a lottery. Even if you can meet these standards, you still have to get into a lottery. And the race is 153 miles, and the cutoff is 36 hours. So it's a tough race. It's very hilly. It's very warm, and you don't have a lot of time. The other thing is that you have to be in ancient Corinth, which is about a little over 50 miles, within 9.5 hours. And this is just following the ancient record of Herodotus, talking about Pheidippides when he did this in 490 BC, kind of the milestones he hit along the way. So essentially what that means is you've got to push pretty hard for the first 50 miles just to make that cutoff to keep going. And then once you get to 50 miles, you're fried, you're exhausted, and you have another 103 miles to go.
Oh my goodness.
So this Spartathlon race it's legendary for how tough it is.
That's crazy. You also describe all the logistical challenge that you had to face as well. I think when most people think of an event now, they think, they're blocking off traffic, at least for several hours. The streets are lined. You've got plenty of space. You've got all the spectators. This was quite a different event as far as the logistics go, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you enjoyed my book, I can tell.
Oh, so much.
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of pulled the modern with the ancient with the modern. I mean, now in modern day Greece, I'm sorry to say, because I'm Greek, it's almost like a third world country in some areas. I mean, the roads are horrible. The drivers, they don't stop, they don't yield. So, you're dealing with traffic as well. To the credit of the Spartathlon, the race, though, they have changed the day from Friday to Saturday the past 2 years. And that's made it a lot better because they were holding the race. It was starting on Friday morning, and you're in the middle of Athens commute. And Athens is a big city. I mean, it's 5 million people in Athens. And like any commute city, the traffic is horrible. So just getting out of Athens during the modern Spartathlon was as much of a challenge as anything else.
Wow. And we also know that with ultra marathons, you do need a support team. But again, logistics came into play here. It's not like you could just call on your team at any time. There are only certain points along the way that they could be there and only a limited amount of things that they could support you with.
Yeah, I mean, the race tries to be true to kind of the original endeavor. You can have a support crew, and they can provide certain change of clothing, some types of food, that kind of thing at certain points, at restricted points, in moral support as well, because, you're pretty much at a mental low a lot of this race, think you're never going to make it. But it's somewhat limited. It's not like some of the other ultra marathons I've run where, your crew can be right alongside you if it's in a car, or, they can be at frequent aid stations along a trail race. This one, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah. I've heard from ultra marathoners as well that you want to have a wide assortment of foods available. You don't necessarily know what you're going to want when push comes to shove. You might want something really sugary. You might want, like you famously ate a whole pizza, I believe, one time. Like you never really know what you want with such limited choices for food. Was that a challenge for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it became a challenge, and I trained on these foods, and I was kind of going into it with the mindset, okay, this is not going to be, a gastronomy festival. You're going to be pretty limited in what you can eat. But the problem was eating figs for over 24 hours. I trained. I told you I trained with figs for 10, 12-hour training runs. But when you get into the 20s, the 30s, the figs start to work their magic. I mean, why do we eat figs? If we're stopped up and we want to be more regular, we eat figs. But when you're running a 153-mile ultra marathon, you don't want to be regular. Like you kind of want to stop that activity. But the figs had the reverse consequences.
Wow.
I'll leave it at that, Casey.
We'll
I
leave
don't,
it at that.
I'm not gonna engage the five senses on that one. Yeah.
We appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I've done enough like long distance bike rides to know that the palate fatigue is so real. Like if you're having something maybe a little bit sweeter or whatever, any kind of fruit, like it's good for a while and then you just don't want it anymore. You want something different to mix up. So I appreciate that that must have been a real challenge as you were going to only have a few things to choose from. But I also wanted to ask you about some of the other competitors that were doing the event. It seemed like everything was really spread out and a real battle of attrition on any ultra marathon, but this one in particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of color that happens along the course on this race, and that's part of it being in Greece. Part of it being that half the field is from overseas, so they're international. And they might not speak English or might not speak Greek, and the people that came out to see me because I'm in Greece. I'm somewhat of a known entity, if you will. And people, I have fans, and they come out and they want to support me, and they'll find me on the side of a road, and tempt me. I remember one man pulled up alongside me, and he bought some I mean, Greece has really good pasterias, and he bought some pastries and some cookies, and he said, "Hey, I know you're following this ancient diet, but wouldn't a cookie be good right now?" So I called him the devil from that point forward. I declined the cookie and somehow kept the mindset to put more figs in my mouth.
Good for you. That's amazing. Tell us where the lowest point was. There surely must have been points in the race where you felt like you couldn't have gone on or didn't want to proceed because it was so challenging and such a tight time schedule. What was your low point during that event?
Well, you actually climb a mountain in the middle of the night. So I remember climbing the top of it's Parnatha. I remember climbing the top of this mountain, and it was so windy up there. To the point, I had a jacket on, a shell. It was still pretty warm, but it was the wind was howling. And I remember looking at these two guys that were kind of huddled around a fire, and the fire was just going. It was just coals at that point because there's no way to keep it lit in the flames. And I thought, this race is, this situation is desperate for these guys being up on this, this mountainous peak with this wind that's going to go on all night, and my situation not so much better. I just remember being really low at that point, like kind of life is is a struggle when you lose.
Wow. And then the finish is also quite interesting because you push through that low point, you were able to finish, but there's not necessarily a finish line that you get to. Can you tell us about the finish and what that felt like?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you've seen the movie 300, you know who the king of Sparta was at the time, Leonidas or Leonidas. And when you finish the race, you basically reach up and you touch his bronze feet. It's a huge statue in the main square of Sparta, which Sparta is actually a place in Greece as well. So that's how the race ends when you touch his feet, and it's spine chilling. I mean, I touched his feet and started to weep. My knees buckled, and you watch anyone coming up and touching his feet. Some people collapse, some people cry, some people laugh, but it's just a glorious moment if you can make it there within 36 hours and finish the race.
Well, you mentioned finishing the race, and yeah, the battle of attrition that we mentioned earlier. How many people did finish the event the year that you did it? I want to say it was nearly 50-50 from what I recall.
Yeah, I think it was about half that year. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a high dropout rate for.
And these are the best athletes in the world too. It's not like, there's 50 slackers that kind of just gave up.
Right.
I mean, these are people that know how to fight and have been there before. Because, again, as I said, that just to get into this race, the qualifying standards, what you have to do at a 100-mile race, at other distances to even get in is really high.
Yeah, the qualification standards. I mean, you described, I believe it was like an American champion in one of the events that passed you early, but then he was not able to continue on at some point. So that tells you how difficult that race was.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no certainty with this race. I don't care. It humbles you. I don't care if you're a champion, or someone who's just new to the sport. There's no mercy. This race, eats its young, if you will.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, okay, this is in your book, you say this is the part where this story should end. You did all of this amazing research. You learned about, the history of Pheidippides and this amazing run that he was able to do. You were able to replicate it. You accomplished your mission. You did it as authentically as you possibly could. And this is where the story should end. But you still have a bit of the story to go when we go back to what happened with Pheidippides arriving at Sparta. Can you tell us a little bit about what next unfolded with that story?
Yes, I will. I mean, he got to Sparta. He made it, and he pronounced to the men of Sparta that the Athenians were requesting them to come to their assistance as quickly as they could because of the Persian invasion. The Spartans said, "Okay, that's you're our brethren, you're our fellow countrymen. We'll come to your aid." And Pheidippides said, "That's great. Let's go." And they said, "There's one slight caveat. We can't leave. Our religion forbids us for leaving for battle until there's a full moon, and that's not for another 6 days." So, being the trained hemodrome that he was, Pheidippides decided to get up the next morning and run back to Athens to tell his countrymen the Spartans are coming. They're just delayed for 6 days, and that's exactly what he did. So he had a hallucination with the god Pan, and if you know anything about mythology, Pan is his upper torso is a man, his lower torso is a goat. You've probably seen the cartoons or something for Pan. He had a hallucination in the middle of the night that Pan told him, the Athenians are not honoring me the way they should. You're becoming slackers, if you will. Pick it up, have that discipline that I have, and I'll support you. So it could be the first ever recorded running related hallucination. This is Herodotus, so he's writing in 400 BC. But Pheidippides went to the battlefield and told the other Athenians, the Spartans are coming in 6 days. But he also said, let's be true to Pan, because if we get into a fight, Pan will instill panic and pandemonium in the enemy. So that's how the story was told.
This next clip is taken from episode 830, which was titled The Carnivore Rabbi Evan Moffick. This episode was released on June 13th, 2025. I loved this conversation because of all the honest questions I had. I literally know next to nothing about rabbis. And so it was super fun to not only hear somebody's story in the carnivore community, but also as it pertains to the Jewish faith and being a rabbi, which, like I said, I knew nothing about. So I thought this was pretty cool to include. Our timings are very similar. I heard about the ketogenic diet really in force for the first time about 7 years ago. I tried carnivore for the first time 6 years ago, so a little bit more time there. But it is quite remarkable how most people's stories kind of jive and were really similar to yours, where it's like, I found keto for, however long it takes to convince somebody that it's either something they want to do or is going to be beneficial, or they're not freaked out about cholesterol, or, we hear the thing all the time that people are drinking melted butter and eating only bacon, which nobody does literally. And so it's just, once you get past that initial weirdness, most people say the same thing. Like, I dropped weight for like the first time in my life. I just wasn't that hungry and the weight came off. I normally don't hear many more benefits than that. But that is one thing we can say about switching over from a ketogenic diet, basically from anywhere you are, is you can lose weight pretty easily and quickly without too much hunger on a ketogenic diet. And it sounds like that was your experience as well.
No question. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, because there's been a few times, I mean, I've been pretty consistent as a carnivore. There was a few times I had my appendix removed. So for a little while, I was kind of not being as strict as and I sometimes actually lose weight when I've gone off of carnivore, because I never go out of, ketosis, or, I mean, I'm sure I'm not in ketosis all the time, but the times that I've lapsed from carnivore, I've just basically been keto. And there have been times where I've actually lost weight. I think maybe I'm eating more fat. Like I'll eat like certain things that I generally wouldn't eat as a carnivore. So yeah, keto is great for weight loss. What I found the best about carnivore was not as much about the physical health, was the mental part of it. That's what made the difference between keto and carnivore for me, was just first of all, the simplicity itself is just wonderful and comforting. Like, I know exactly what I'm going to eat. And then really the mental clarity. I think some of that too comes to I have really come to see that carnivore and keto works for more people, but carnivore is life-changing for certain types of people. Not everybody. Not everybody, some carnivores are they think everybody should be carnivore. I don't think that. I think certain people benefit from it so much. And one of the common things, at least that I felt, is people who have addiction issues, I'm talking, I mean, it can manifest as drug addiction and things like that, but it's just addiction to anything. Could be addiction to exercise, addiction to certain tastes in your mouth. Carnivore helps enormously. It creates a certain kind of sobriety and simplicity and nourishment. It gives you that nourishment that people look for in other things. It could be someone who's addicted to diet soda. It could be someone who's addicted to chewing gum or something. A strict carnivore diet is one of the best tools you can have for people who experience those issues.
Would you say, like, in hindsight in particular, like, would that describe you and your own personality as, like, on the addictive side?
Oh yeah. And for me, it was actually in many ways a positive addiction. I think I was addicted in some ways to running. I did it. I had a running injury, and I think I had overdone myself, which I think a lot of runners kind of get that way. But you get the runner's high, and so that was part of it. Also, I've written several books, and I kind of almost think I was addicted to writing. Almost in some ways, you just get addicted to certain things, and a lot of them were positive. I've never had any drug or addiction issues in that regard, but more in just kind of my psychology. And I think carnivore kind of let me relax around those in a positive way.
Yeah, it's hard to identify in yourself, and there's different assessments you can do and that kind of thing. But if we think about an addict, like if I'm telling somebody what I've told somebody my entire career is like moderation, 80-20 or 90-10 or whatever that line is for you, I can just speak for myself that the longer I go, if I dabble a little bit, I can't turn it off very easily, to my own detriment. Like I've mentioned this before, like I cheated on my diet a few weeks ago. I don't like to use the word cheat, but I went off of carnivore. I ordered a pizza, and I ate way more pizza than I wanted to. Like 3/4 of this pizza was gone, and I'm just not the person that is going to put dish soap on the last piece or throw it out like a sane, logical person. I'm going to be sick to my stomach, know that my sleep is going to suck, my anxiety is going to be back, and I'm going to eat that last piece of pizza.
Addiction is very, and that in some ways, every human being has certain addictions. I mean, we all do. And some of them are harmless and some of them are very harmful. But part of it is just the human condition. I'd say everybody is addicted to carbs because we needed carbs to survive. So in fact, we selected over time. There were times when people didn't have any animals, so there was no hunt. And so people who could digest carbs and get energy from things you could grab from a tree or from a plant could survive more. And so we grew, it didn't change we still thrive on carnivore, but we have a desire for carbs because they kept us alive. And so in some sense, we're all addicted to carbs. Some people say, there's a great book on this. Lierre Keith is the author. It's called The Vegetarian Myth.
So good.
She said, it's such a great, that it's essentially addiction to carbs is what led to the agricultural revolution. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. So addiction is a huge thing. And so we do things that we generally know are bad for us. We all do. Again, some are more harmful than others. Like that was harmful for a period of time. It sucked and you knew it would suck, but you get over it. Yeah. Now, other addictions are much harder.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, that's really well said. I messaged Jack as soon as I listened to your episode when you had mentioned the book, The Vegetarian Myth. And I said to him, dude, you've never heard of the vegetarian myth. And I think he took it as me like calling him ignorant or whatever. But I'm like, no, dude, if I could go back and listen to that again with fresh ears, I would. It's such a great book. And we've been honored to host her on our show as well. She's an absolute angel. What a wonderful book.
I have to listen to that episode where you had her.
We've had a few. We've had a few. It's one of those books that like I could tell you exactly where I was driving when she was making certain points or telling the story about the slugs. And I'll just say this, like what you were mentioning, I absolutely love. And I think about it along the same ways as like supply and demand almost. So I live in the Salt Lake Valley. People do gardens and tomatoes thrive in our climate. Like the best tomatoes. Like once you eat a Utah warm, dirty tomato in the sunshine, it's like a revelation. You'll never buy a store-bought tomato ever again. And if some fall on the ground, of course I know it's not an animal product, but I will have a tomato or two and they're absolutely delicious. And then there's this day, sometime in October, where there's a hard freeze. And I still like tomatoes as much on that day as I did the day previously. The only difference is on this day, after the hard freeze, tomatoes are now completely inaccessible to me. I can like them the same amount. I can't have any. They're not there. I could go to the store and buy one and they taste like cardboard, but a Utah tomato is off the table. Literally, I cannot have one. I have to wait 10 months, 11 months for the season to come around again. And I think about it the same way as like, yes, we all have a level of sugar addiction in a world where sugar is exceedingly rare or exceedingly seasonal. And when you get it, attack it while you can because it's not going to be there very long.
Exactly. That's so well put. And in some ways, that is the problem with modern society. I mean, I think about this all the time as a rabbi. I believe in hope. I believe in progress. I believe in optimism and a better world for our children and our grandchildren, the future generations, and that we're moving forward. You have to have hope. But at the same time, there are so many problems with how our world works. I mean, I don't want to get political, but I think, part of RFK's attraction is saying, all these processed foods, everything that is so accessible, the fact that you can go get donuts at 2 a.m. and eat, a dozen of them, that's not how we evolved. That's bad for us. It is really extremely unhealthy and inconsistent, and no wonder we're getting more sick. And so one of the great things about Lierre's book, and something, I grew up in the city. I grew up in a big city. I never did much camping or anything, but carnivore has made me feel much closer to nature and natural rhythms and eating things that are close by I've seen the farms where some of the meat that I buy is made. And so it actually restores a certain kind of natural cycle, which I think makes us happier and healthier human beings. You don't have to be a carnivore to get that. You can eat tomatoes when they're ripe. You can do that, but falling into that natural pattern is what's best for us.
This next clip is taken from episode 879 of Boundless Body Radio, and this is called Strength Training and Aging with Professor Maria Fiatarone Singh. This episode, again, 879, was released on September 29th, 2025. I was so much looking forward to this conversation, and it definitely did not disappoint. Professor Maria has been doing incredible research for decades with strength training in older populations, in geriatric populations, and seeing absolutely incredible results. So always difficult to coordinate time zones between us and Australia. I was so grateful for her for being willing to wake up very early to do this recording. And like I said, it did not disappoint. I love her message and love hearing about elderly people getting on strength training plans. So here's a clip from Professor Maria. And trying to think back on that time in the 80s, the jogging boom had just kind of started maybe the decade earlier. We were well in the throes of the low fat movement and, the no fat kind of area. The food pyramid would have come out a few years later. But I'm just thinking like this must have been very controversial to do that initial study, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of skepticism, mostly I would say on the part of the healthcare practitioners, not so much the patients or the residents. So when we went to this nursing home and tried to promote our study for the first time, and we had like a meeting in a seminar room or auditorium, and people came down to hear because it was a place that lots of research was done, affiliated with Harvard, and so they were always used to hearing about new studies that they could participate in. And so I proposed my study, and I said, we're going to do weightlifting, and who wants to join my study? And they kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, well, do you want to live longer? And they looked at me like, we're 90-year-old Holocaust survivors. We're good, and so I said, well, what would make you, want to do this study? And this little man in the front row stood up and he said, what I would like to be able to get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom by myself without calling the nurse, and come back to my bed. And I said, I can give you that. So that was really the kind of, light bulb moment that, mobility is the key. And, these people don't need to run a marathon. Mostly they need to navigate their, environment around their home and walk to the store and those kinds of things. And the medicines that we give them treat their diseases, but we don't have any medicines for the things that are really core to their quality of life, as you said, which is often frailty, mobility impairment, falls, fear of falling, activity restriction, fatigue. So we don't have drugs for any of those things, right? We have drugs for organs, but not for the thing that is really bothering them. And I'm, as a geriatrician, which is what I am, when people are sent to me for consultation from other doctors, they're very well doctored up with, lots of organ specialists for every part of their body and lots of medications. But I often find that when they walk in the door, no one has really seen them. The thing that strikes me, absolutely first when I see them is this frailty often, but it isn't on their list of diagnoses. It isn't, there's no drug for it. No one has really, called it. And that's what we treat. And we still, we treat their medical diseases because a lot of them contribute to frailty and lots of drug side effects contribute to frailty, but none of them treat it. And so we deliver the treatment, which is high intensity progressive resistance training, often with balance training added. We don't prescribe walking or aerobic exercise initially for most of them. We do later on. But the thing that kind of is very striking is that, if you look at a young person who's not walking or running, they don't want to, or they don't have time. They can, but they just don't want to. Whereas an older person who isn't walking, it's not really lack of desire. It's really lack of capacity. So it's very much like a baby almost who, desire is fine. You don't have to pat them on the back and say, oh, really, you really should be exercising. You have to give them capacity, which is generally growing up. Whereas in an older adult, it's kind of the same again. They don't not want to walk. It's just that they have lost the reserves that allow them to get out of a chair safely and stand up and walk across the room. And we found that even in that first study we did, we just did seated strength training, no balance training, nothing else. And they began walking around the nursing home 35% more with activity monitors that we put on their ankles compared to the people in the control group who were getting the typical kind of, gentle exercise, throwing a beach ball around class in the nursing home. So that's really so we focus on the prime movers, if you will, of mobility, and then often find that other things emanate from that. And it's not just physical. We've done studies with clinical depression and with cognitive impairment and early dementia and late dementia, in fact. And we see very strong neuropsychological changes as well. And it's not, not so much of a mystery because the head is connected to the body, and basically the anabolic factors that are the, muscle growth factors that emanate when you contract a muscle do go to the brain, and the neurons have the same requirements as muscle cells in terms of liking anabolic hormones and not liking catabolic or destructive hormones or insulin, inflammatory mediators, things like that. So exercise is very anti-inflammatory in that way. It kind of shifts you from this catabolic to an anabolic milieu, which is what you want. And so without, giving somebody testosterone or androgens in any form, you can induce those same anabolic changes with the weightlifting exercise, and sometimes accompanied by, protein and things if they're malnourished. But, that's the key that's missing from the drugs that we give, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wow. So I learned that from you very recently. I don't think this can be overstated. In that first study, the group of people that you were doing strength training for, you weren't telling them that they should also go walk or add more movement to their day. They just spontaneously did it because it's that capacity, like you were saying, like the baby. The baby would love to walk around or run around, sees everybody else doing it, just can't do it at that time.
Absolutely.
It needs time to build that skill. It's absolutely spontaneous.
Yeah, and if you look at a nursing, I think the conception of most people is that, walking's the easiest thing to do, right? If you're going to exercise somebody, the safest, easiest thing to do is to just tell them to take a walk, which is what most doctors do. You should be a little more active. Go take a walk. And if you look into a nursing home, most people can't walk or walk very well. They're sitting along the hallways in their wheelchairs. They can barely get up without falling over. So I tried to start a walking group in my second study there, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't find anybody who could, join the walking group, except for pushing somebody else in a wheelchair. And so it became quite obvious that walking is really hard, but sitting on a machine and lifting heavy weights is actually quite easy, quite feasible, quite doable. Almost everybody can do it, almost everyone. And we did a study a little bit later where we went to like 18 different nursing homes and we're comparing different kinds of rehab. And we had one of the arms of the study was weightlifting. And we went to the nurses and we, as a screening thing, we were having the nurses like pick out people who might join the study. And we had this form that we had designed, which was meant to kind of trick them into thinking the way they were taught. And on the front of it were all the different chronic diseases that people might have, and, everything you can think of head to toe. And it said, does your patient have any of these? And it was a little tick box next to each one. And so they ticked off, heart disease, diabetes, lung disease, whatever. And then it said, please turn over. And then, in the back, it said, congratulations, your patient, has 7 diseases that qualify for them for this study, because it's the exact opposite of what people think is that, the more diseases they have, the more it's relevant. And one of the nurses I remember came up to me and she said, she was very timid. She said, I have this patient. I don't know if it would really apply to her. I'm not sure. Can you come and see her? So I went into her room. And there was this woman lying in bed. She wasn't that old. She was in her 60s, but very, very skeletal sarcopenia, like almost no muscle. And she'd had rheumatoid arthritis her whole life and was kind of lying in bed, contracted. Most of her joints were contracted, cognitively intact. And she had this one arm that moved. She had her left arm, I remember it was, she could, still bend up her elbow and she could, touch her head and things. And the nurse said to me, do you think she would qualify for your program? And I looked at this woman and I said, I've never seen anybody more in need of weightlifting than this woman. I said, she's got one muscle that still moves, her biceps. She has a dignity to feed herself and to comb her hair still with that one arm. And there isn't anybody I can think of who needs it more than her, to try and keep that last sort of shred of dignity. And obviously there was no other kind of exercise this woman could possibly do, right? There's no drug to help her. But keeping that one arm moving, by making it stronger and more functional, is the one thing that she had left in terms of her quality of life. So I think, again, it's the exact opposite of what people think in terms of feasibility. The people you think are the least able to do it are really the people least able to do aerobic exercise, but they still can do weightlifting exercise. Absolutely.
This next clip comes from another OG in the health and fitness space. This episode is number 897, and it's called The Slow Burn Revolution with fitness expert Frederick Hahn. This episode was released on November 7th, 2025. Fred Hahn is a legend as well. He learned from the best, Dr. Bambo Kikyo, who we've heard earlier in this episode. Fred has done amazing work and teaches people all about proper strength training, which we're going to get a clip of here. One thing that just always strikes me is these protocols are not new. Like, you helped bring them to light and you practice them. But when you listen to the history of like where this stuff came from, it's not new at all. And I consider you an expert of where this stuff came from. So can you tell us, like, as far as the protocol of like slow strength, when did this kind of get started?
Yeah, I tell people like that, though, when they see my book, they're like, "Oh, you invented this?" I'm like, "No, I didn't even come close to inventing it. Um, I just helped popularize it. That's all." Um, well, the there was an article back in Strength and Health magazine. I wish I had it. I could show it. Back in 1965, and it was an article called MCMM, Muscular Contractions with Measured Movement. And in the article, they discuss how lifting weights with a very slow movement speed, and they literally state 10 seconds to lift it, 10 seconds to lower it, not only helped strength athletes of the time to recover from injuries, but that slow movement speed actually helped them break plateaus in their, Zercher lifts and all of these one arm, other strength feat type of lifts. And in the article from 1965 or 1966, around there, they mentioned that this has been around since the mid 1940s. So the whole concept, whether you call it, what I call it, slow burn, some people call it super slow. Dr. Ben Bakikio, a mentor of mine, he calls it the smart, slow motion, the smart resistance training exercise system, all kinds of different names for it. But it has been popular, I guess you could say, and used by many strength athletes since at least the 1940s and probably before. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how did you get interested in all this and kind of wrapped up? You mentioned Dr. Ben Bokikio. He's somebody I got to hang out with last month. I consider him a good friend. He's an amazing person.
Yeah.
Like, how did you kind of get interested in this stuff?
Great.
And how did you find this world where like so many other people did not?
Well, so back in the early to mid 1980s, I was working as this was at the New York Health and Racket Club. And I was looking for a job, and I walked in and I met the manager there, and they had all this old Nautilus equipment there. And I was like, wow, oh, this is amazing. And the manager said, I said, I'm looking for a job. And he goes, you know about Nautilus? I said, yeah, Arthur Jones, Ellington, and he like flipped out. So we just geeked out on each other about Nautilus. And he hired me as a floor manager to, like a proctor. So I would walk around the gym and go, your seat's too low, slow it down. No, you can do one more, blah, 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 stuff like that. But this is when personal training was kind of in its infancy, as far as I know. And then from there, I met a physical therapist, started to date her, and she got hired as the head physical therapist for the brand new Hospital for Joint Diseases Sports Medicine Center. And this was on the east side of Manhattan, like around 2nd Avenue and 10th Street or something like that. So I got hired as a certified trainer, a strength trainer, so that, you go skiing, you break your knee, the doctor fixes your knee, and then you go to physical therapy. So you would go to physical therapy, and then once the physical therapist did their ultrasound, their heat, their cold, massage, breaking up scar tissue, then they would send you into the gym in order to strengthen. So it was my responsibility to take all of these orthopedically compromised patients, and within 8 weeks, 10 weeks, that's all they got of PT. 6 weeks sometimes, that's all the insurance company paid for. It was my job to make them as strong as I possibly could. So I thought, if that's my job, how the hell am I going to do this? So I started to read everything I could about exercise physiology, strength training, techniques, methods, protocols, whatever. And I came across Dr. Ellington Darden, Ken Hutchins, Ben Bakikio, and all of it, Dr. Ralph Carpinelli, Dr. Richard Winnett. So I started reading what all these folks were writing about training, and I came to the conclusion that obviously the most time efficient and effective way would be high intensity strength training. But how do you apply that safely? Because these people are compromised. So it just simply made sense to me that it should be done in a slow motion, MC, MM, super slow burn, whatever you want to call it, method. And so I did that. And I had the job for like 6 or 7 months or so. And then one day, the head of orthopedic surgery, or he was the co-head or associate, he came up to me, pointed at me through the big glass window, and went, "Come here." And so I went into his office and I sat down, and he said, "Fred, what are you doing with my patients?" And I thought I was getting fired. And I said, "Well, I'm just, strength training. I'm doing what I felt like I was supposed to do." And he goes, "Fred, I have never seen my patients get this strong, this fast. What are you doing?" So from there, one thing led to another. And Dr. Mensch and I founded and established a company called Metro Sports Med, which was a physical therapy clinic located at New York Methodist Hospital in Brooklyn. And the idea there was to provide orthopedic rehabilitation that was superior to any other type of orthopedic rehabilitation that has ever existed. So again, you'd break your knee, go to the PT, and then you would come out on our floor with a certified personal trainer, and we would not only strengthen your knee, but within a half an hour, we would strength train your knee and the rest of your body, your neck, your lower back, your arms, everything that we could get our hands on. And we were able to achieve orthopedic rehab in a fraction of the time. So we thought that if insurance companies could see that instead of having to pay for 8 or 10 weeks, they only have to pay for 4 or 5, that insurance companies would be impressed by that, and they would want people to come to us. They would recommend, like, "We want you to go here because it's going to save us money." As it turns out, health insurance companies could care less about your health. So that process, although we believed very strongly in it, and it worked very well. And not only that, after you were discharged from physical therapy, you could stay and become a client and just continue with your strength training. So and then I ran that clinic for 3 to 4 years. And the problem was that physical therapists, and Arthur Jones used to say this, he goes, "The dumbest people in the world are not exercise physiologists. They're physical therapists." And, just joking. No, that's actually what he said. But I could not get most of the physical therapists to understand that. They would say, "Well, if you put somebody in a leg extension machine, that's not functional. When do you ever do leg extension in real life?" They would literally say idiotic things like that. And so the fight with them became so difficult that I just decided, you know what, I don't need this anymore. And then I founded and established this facility here that I'm sitting in New York in 1998. And then my one in Montclair in New Jersey. And I established that actually next month, 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that's how it came about.
That's incredible. Wow. What a cool journey. I absolutely love that. I'm going to time travel back to a conversation I had maybe like 6 months ago. I've had hundreds of these. You've had tens of thousands of these conversations where I'm meeting with a woman for the first time. She lives in Chicago. I live here in Salt Lake City. She's telling me she wants to get stronger. I'm explaining some of the principles that you and I are just about to talk about. You really just need to work out once a week, 30 minutes. We can handle it. It's not easy. Like, you're not going to like me very much, but we can get this done in 30 minutes and you can go about your way. She's like, "Well, I don't believe it. That sounds insane. I've never gotten strong in my life. I've worked out multiple times, multiple programs, done all the things. None of it worked." Go back to yesterday. We do our session. She is literally getting stronger. And for the first time in her life, I'm feeling stronger. This is great. I still don't even believe that we can work out like this for 30 minutes, one time a week through my cell phone across a time zone. She owns a $30 set of bands from Amazon, and she's getting stronger and she feels amazing. Now she's fasting 2 days a week. It's so cool.
Oh, great.
So why does nobody know about this? Why is it that you, again, were able to find this? You've been able to implement this so successfully, yet if I go out on the street or even read in some of my personal training manuals, like, nobody knows. Or if I ask somebody on the street and say, like, "What is fitness? What do people do at the gyms?" They say, "Oh, we jump around, you throw things, you do all these TRX classes, all these things," which is great. That's all fine. But, like, how did all this information become so esoteric?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have one of the things is that many people, and look at politics, right? Many people, they do not like to admit it's difficult for them to admit that they were wrong about something. I and other people like me hate to actually be wrong. That bothers me a lot more than having to admit that I am. In the world of exercise, and I've had conversations with people where, for example, one physical therapist said to me at a trade show, "Well, why are you going so slow? Why do you go so slow? What's the purpose of that?" And I said, "Well, safety." "What do you mean?" "Well, the faster you lift a given weight, let's say 100 pounds, the faster I lift 100 pounds, the more force I'm producing to lift that 100 pounds. And the more force I produce, the greater the chance of injury. If I can reduce with the same weight, if I can reduce that force minimally, then I'm making the exercise safer." And she's like, "I don't agree." And I, "Well, but force equals mass times acceleration." And she goes, "Well, I don't agree with that." And I'm like, "But what? Isaac Newton figured that. What are you not agreeing with? That you cannot not agree with that. That's science." And this was her response to me. "Well, I have my own science."
Good.
Now, how do you talk to? So I was like deer in the headlights. There's nothing you can say. So for someone like that, her ability to admit she was wrong was far stronger than the feeling of actually being wrong. And I think a lot of people are like that. So the way I get around that with clients, and actually this happened to me the other day. I went to Montclair and I was there doing some things, and a woman just walked in and she, blah, blah, blah. "But I don't believe you can get fit training once or just twice a week for 30 minutes. I don't see how that's possible." And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. When you go out and get a suntan, let's say you want to get a suntan, you go out in the sun, you lay out there for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and then you leave. When you look in the mirror, are you tan? You're red. And if you have too much sun exposure, you're burnt, and then you have to stay out of the sun for 2 weeks. So you have to apply just enough sunshine to your skin, get out. Then you have to let time go by. And over time, you get tan. So the benefit of exercise, any exercise that you do that actually will cause a positive tissue adaptation, more muscle, more bone, more strength, and all that, occurs when you're not exercising." And she went, "What?" I went, "Yeah, the exercise is a controlled detriment. You walk out of the gym, quote unquote, broken down, tired, depleted. Your body then needs time to repair and rebuild. Like you're asking your body, hey, man, I need more bone. I need more muscle. Hey, man." And your body's like, all right. Just hold your horses. That takes a little time there. If you keep pummeling me and breaking me down, how in the world am I going to give you what you're asking me for? So when I sort of speak like that to clients, they go, "Oh." So they don't ever have to feel like they're admitting they're wrong. It's just cool new information that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's well explained. Yeah. Okay. Tell us how you would explain to somebody what muscle success is.
Mm-hmm. So I usually say, whenever we are, well, in our initial consultations, we give a very short PowerPoint slide presentation. And one of the slides is a picture of the muscle fibers, the slow twitch, the intermediate, and the fast, with the motor neuron attached to the fiber. And so what I say to them is, Henneman size principle is a principle in exercise physiology where, and take a look at the slide, where when you start an exercise, the slow twitch motor units are recruited and they're humming along, helping you out. Now, once the exercise starts to get difficult, the slow twitch fibers are still cooking. They're still moving along. Now the intermediate fibers are coming in to help you. Once you get to the point where you actually feel like, holy cow, I don't think I can do another one, but I'll try. Only then do you begin to recruit the fast twitch so-called muscle fibers. So that in the trades is called reaching momentary muscular failure. But we don't like the word failure. So we call it reaching momentary muscular success, because you've successfully recruited all of the available fibers in that particular motor unit, in that muscle, and have successfully stimulated in the brain a positive tissue adaptation to those particular muscles that you were just exercising. Now we move on to a different set of muscles, and then another, and then another, and another. 6 to 8 to 9 exercises later, bye-bye, go home. So you've succeeded in achieving the stimulatory mechanisms to make you a better you.
The final clip we are going to be including in this episode is from episode 899. This episode was titled Reversing Her Child's Bipolar with Metabolic Therapy with Christina and Genevieve Cook. This episode was released on November 10th, 2025. As I was preparing for this episode, I was getting prepared to host Christina for the second time. We hosted her the first time back on episode 837. And Genevieve, her daughter, her 13-year-old daughter, was also there and surprised us and wanted to be on the episode as well. She's a little bit harder to hear, and it was a little bit of a challenge to communicate through Zoom with her and with them, but I really wanted to include this is the final episode, the final clip, so you can get a little bit of her audio as well and some of her story. Please go back and listen to that full episode. The whole thing was very emotional. I was close to tears in a lot of this conversation, and so I thought this was a very special clip to hear Christina and Genevieve talk about their journey through metabolic health and literally reversing Genevieve's bipolar. So here's that clip now.
Thanks for having us, Casey. I'm excited to be back. And this one's excited to make her debut.
Yay! Hello, Genevieve.
I'm just going to be on for a little bit.
That is
Just a little
totally
bit.
fine with us. I'm sure there's a lot more fun things that you can be doing
I
than
can't stay still.
chatting with me. That's okay. That's okay. It is a
She's got-
Friday.
she's got more fun things to do than this.
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. We really appreciate you joining us. And I guess I'll ask you a few questions first, since you'll be here just for a little while. But can you tell us a little bit about your story?
When I was 5, on like the second day of school, I ran off. I absolutely ran away from the school, and the teachers had to find me. They found me on the biggest hill. That's where the new school is now, where I'm at now. And so my mom took me to the doctors, and what did he say now?
That was kind of the beginning of where these behaviors really went extra erratic on us, was when she started school and she started taking this fight or flight response to all of the different transitions. We were trying everything we possibly could to help her navigate those challenges, and nothing was working. And she just kept getting more frustrated, more aggressive, and she was starting to really detach from all of the things around her. So we were like, okay, I'm trying my best here. Like, something's got to give. So we started to raise some concerns with our doctor, and we started down that road of, okay, what's going on with her? And it wasn't long before we had started medications and different therapies, and she continued to progress deeper into all different sorts of diagnoses and all different sorts of symptoms. And ultimately, she landed with diagnosis of ADHD and OCD and anxiety and depression. And she was having suicidal thoughts. And then these hallucinations were starting during her manic episodes towards the end. And I was like, this is absolutely insane. This can't be her story. And it was a long 6 years, wasn't it, babes?
Mm-hmm.
It was a long 6 years, but
I struggled making friends. Now that I'm better, people still see me as the same Genevieve.
Mm.
Makes it harder to find friends.
Yeah. Do you
we're
remember?
working on that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember that first day when you decided to run away from school? Do you remember like making that choice, or was it almost like something you felt like you had to do?
Had to do.
Yeah. Do you remember what it felt like to have some of the medications? Did they make anything a little bit better? Did they make you tired?
Worked for a little bit, then stopped.
It would
Then
stop.
we progressed, and they still kept working for just a tiny bit, and then they stopped.
Wow.
Working.
Wow. Okay. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience that we learned about when you spent, I believe it was several weeks in some type of an institution.
CAS? Yeah.
What was that like?
So it was a 16-week program at the Children's Hospital here in Nova
16.
Scotia.
Oh,
16 weeks she was there for the bulk of the week, and then she was home with us on the weekends. And it was an intensive service program where she was there with, I think, 8 other children. So it was a small group of children, but they worked with them on, of course, all of the different interrelationship things and try to work with them on managing their behaviors and understanding their feelings and all of those things that we were also doing at home. And we were doing parent portions of the program where they're essentially teaching us the same kinds of strategies to help her at home, which were all of the same things we were already doing. So it was just like a refresher on all the things we're doing that weren't working. And it was so frustrating for us.
And while I was there, I was the only girl. There was day kids, night kids. I was one of the night kids. Only girl. I was the only one that was the most aggressive towards the others. I was often put in a secure room where I chewed the walls. And it really hurt because they did they had to hold me back and hold my head with their chin. Or someone else had to come and hold my head back so I wouldn't headbutt them. Since I did that to my mom before.
Yeah.
wow.
So it was pretty hard.
That sounds very
all things-
scary.
Yeah. They're all things that we're just recently starting to really talk about.
I also broke my old door, massive dents in my wall. I had a lot of rough times. I tried running away a lot. Only made it to the fire hall, which is right beside us, until I heard my parents' terrified voices. Then my mind made up my mind to go back. So I came back.
Wow. Wow.
It's crazy to listen to her talk about these things because it seems like so long ago. It's just like this last year, we've literally been living on a ketone high of I can't believe what life has come to at this point so quickly. It's like, how was that normal for us? It's like that was our everyday, constantly trying to manage her behaviors and her moods. And it was exhausting for all of us.
Yeah.
And now it's just not. And it was such a simple change for me. Once I understood what was going on, it was just like, well, I'm unsubscribing from all of that. Let's do this. And
I heard my blood flowing through my veins and sometimes, and I still hear my heartbeat sometimes in my ears, which makes me think I'm going into a fight or flight state, but I'm not, and I can't. Since that's what I usually know when it's coming, it's not doing that. It's doing it still, but it's hard to tell if I'm having a manic episode or just my heart's racing
yeah,
from running.
that's the old PTSD we call from the bipolar. It's like we have these normal situations in our daily life that of course cause these different stresses and these different trigger points that we've experienced over the years. And her body and her mind, and of course everything about her becomes scared that, okay, my body's doing the things it used to do. It's about to get bigger, but it's not getting bigger on her anymore. And helping her recognize that and understand that and talking with her through that, she's getting a lot better at figuring these things out and not it's just not the same life anymore. She's got such a better handle on all the things.
That's amazing.
Very proud of her for doing the hard work.
Good for you, Genevieve. I have one more question about kind of the harder times before I ask you a few questions about the better times and everything turning around. But I remember from my childhood, if I ever did something, if I acted up and caused grief for my parents, not only would I feel bad for doing something bad, but then I'd feel like double bad because I could feel the stress that I was causing around me with my parents. Do you recall feeling that way as well?
I didn't notice it until like days after the episode.
Got it. Yeah, that must have been really hard. Okay, let's talk about the turnaround.
But I also forget some parts of episodes, so I can't really remember all of it.
Yeah, true. Let's talk about the good stuff.
It's cold. It's cold.
Sorry.
Cold hand. Okay, so let's talk about the good thing. What do you remember about maybe your mom getting a little bit excited about changing the food? Did you notice that, she was maybe throwing some foods away and bringing some new foods, or was it just like you were just eating whatever?
We sold $1,500 worth of groceries.
Just threw them out.
Didn't you give them to your brother?
Yeah, gave some away, threw some out. I emptied this house.
And 3 days later, I ran into my parents' room. My parents thought something was wrong. My mom woke up feeling like she was deaf. I came in there saying, all the voices in my head are gone. What do I do?
Yeah, what do I do? She's like, what? Why am I so quiet? That ketogenic diet switched her whole body into some high-powered healing, and she got some relief pretty friggin' quick.
Wow. What about like getting rid of the medications? Could you notice a difference when you started to be able to like taper down or get off of the medications? You were feeling more.
I did. When I woke up in the morning for school, I was feeling great until I took my medications. Then I full on blown out. So I'm like, I'm done. I just stopped taking them.
I worked with our pharmacist to get her a lower dosage that we still had on file in hopes to taper her slowly and safely in anticipation of what could happen, right? I didn't go into it blindly. I was aware of, okay, we got to stay on top of this. So I worked with the pharmacist to get some lower doses. But after a couple of days of trying that, she was feeling so rotten. She's like, Mom, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I thought, what is the absolute worst that could happen? I've watched the system fail her. They're calling me at home to ask me what I do with her at home when these episodes are happening, because the strategies they're using, they're at their wits' end, and they're not getting any further ahead with her than I was. Why am I going to trust her to that system anyway? So I knew I'd be able to keep her safe at home. And we just stayed on top of her and watched her behaviors. We made sure we went for nice long walks. We were doing like cold plunges. We just did all of the other metabolic therapies in anticipation of what could happen. And she was very fortunate to not have any adverse side effects when we were able to taper that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. It's great that you had that resource and somebody to talk to in case there was an issue. But I would feel the same way. Like, of course, you say you need to have a doctor to help you step down from these things. But like, I would feel the same thing that you did. Like, well, what's going to get any worse than it is right now? If we can just take these off and I can monitor her and we can deal with the situation, I would think the same thing. Genevieve, after feeling like you're getting your life back a little bit, what's been some of your favorite highlights from the last year of things you've done or people you've met, or, whether it be school or vacations? Like, what have been some of your favorite things?
Well, I went on my first camping trip in July this year, and I went to see the Cabot Trail. I'm in my classroom full time. Grade 7 is feeling like it's going by in a breeze, almost done of term 1. And we went to like this canoe thing. Hold on, let me get a picture. Where we went mudsliding.
We're able to do all of the things now. Like, we're doing all the things we couldn't do.
We're being shown a picture. Is that on the beach?
That is us mudsliding in the Shubenacadie River.
Oh, wow.
We're literally covered in mud.
That's amazing.
Rafting, and then this was like part of the tour. It was the wildest experience.
Huge.
That's pretty cool. I'm going to have to look that up. The photo was a little glossy, so it was a little bit hard to see that everybody's covered in mud. But that looks like fun.
I'll send you a picture.
Please do. Please do. Wow. And do you feel like it's like easier to socialize with people, make new friends, that kind of thing?
I'm still having trouble with the friends part, but I'm getting better at talking to people.
Good.
Because the kids still see me as gonna scream if they don't play with me.
Yeah.
So I only have very few friends.
Yeah. I definitely understand
those few friends that she does have, I mean, that's beautiful for her to finally have those connections that she started. She's still struggling in some areas because, I mean, kids will be kids and they can be mean, and she's been through a lot and they've seen her go through a lot. So she's just about at that point in her life where she's going to be able to switch schools and get into the high school here soon, and it'll be a whole different environment. And we're just
I still have 1 more year.
No, it'll go by so fast though.
It'll go by way fast. It feels different when you're your age, but trust us, it'll go way fast. You'll be up and driving and paying bills before you know it. So
Yeah.
could you
When
imagine?
high school is, I have to go up the road
Okay,
to get to my bus. I had to walk.
good. Could you imagine yourself doing something like this, like a year ago, like sitting down and having this type of a conversation and talking about your experiences? No.
No, without my mom. No.
Yeah.
No.
So what does it feel like now? I've heard you on my friend Natalie and Robin's podcast, Keto Biography. You guys did a wonderful job, and I've seen you guys on Metabolic Mind, and here you are sitting with us. Like, how does it feel now? You have your social media channels, and you're trying to get this message out. How does it feel to know that you're really making a difference? You're helping a lot of people out there who are going through this.
Well, my mom was just still in the 3 digits of followers on Metabolic. Like, what was it called?
On X. Yeah.
On X. Then when I sent her a video I made after I got home from school, and she posted it, overnight, 3,000 followers.
Was that
And I think it's still rising.
Was that the video that I first found you guys to begin with? Was that the one where you were like at the ocean and you said something like, "Oh, how can my cells not love this?" Is a different one.
Actually, this is a different one. This was just it was on the 23rd of September because that was her 1 year anniversary of us finding Dr. Palmer at the Nutrition Roundtable. So that was her 1 year ketogenic diet anniversary. And she decided that she was going to she wanted me to post, I should say, a message to thank.
Casey Means, Callie Means, Dr. Chris Palmer, and RFK. And all the other ones. Since I forget all their names.
Yeah, she wanted to thank them for basically saving her life because ultimately that's the chain of events that happened. One press conference.
Breaking at the end because I was a little teary.
Yeah, but one press conference changed everything. It was a chain of events that came with a force to be reckoned with, and here we are.
Dr. Chris Palmer's built before you finished speaking.
Yep. I wasn't messing around. I wanted to help my little girl.
Yeah, and I'm just
I
curious.
Running out of my room saying, "What did he just say?" When he said bipolar was curable.
It was like full stop moment in our house. I really do think the world stopped when Chris Palmer was talking.
Dogs stopped moving.
That is one of my favorite
That's
parts
what
of
I
the story, where
felt.
you came out of your bedroom after being like, "Wait, what? What is this?"
What?
It took me like 2 seconds to process, and I'm like, "What is running out of my room?"
Yeah. She's like, sign me up. Whatever that is, let's do it.
That's
I love
amazing.
it.
Wow, that's amazing. Genevieve, I don't want to keep you too much longer. You can stay as long as you like, of course, but is there anything else you would like us to know about either your story or about, how excited you are to live your life without having to deal with all the stuff you dealt with in the past?
Well, I used to be way behind on all my schoolwork. Now I'm right on top of it, especially in my social studies, science, ELA, healthy living, which is a pretty hard part for me since we're in the food part. I'm like,
Pretty hard to hear.
yeah. And so my mom's going to try to talk to my teacher about it to see if she can come in.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to speak to my son's psychology class at the high school about metabolic therapies and stuff. And she's hoping that I might be able to have an opportunity to speak to her class as well.
Wow.
And I used to be able to not participate in anything. I used to hide under a chair in music class because of one song
Wow.
that we did on Boom Whackers.
What are those?
You're a whole different kid.
It was like,
And it's like, you said it was a boom whacker?
yeah, Boom Whackers.
What is a boom whacker?
Yeah, that's what I've never heard of that.
Like it goes like dun dun dun.
Kind of like a drum or something. I'll have to look it up. I
Yeah,
have no
but you
idea.
bang in your hand or thigh. But they're in like all different notes. Like you can like piano, for instance.
Okay.
Older people like your mom and I, we're not in touch with this kind of thing, so we really rely on you to help teach us the new vocabulary.
This is problem with the millennial generation.
Oh man, I'm telling you, she's gonna rule the world someday.
Absolutely.
I
Genevieve,
think I'm pretty close.
I think you're pretty close. I do have one question, one last question for you, and it's not the first time that I've asked you. I've gotten to talk to you before. We weren't recording. We were just kind of having a nice friendly chat. And I asked you this question. Yep. We talked about it with your mom last time she was on, and I absolutely loved your answer. And it's kind of around the fact that now you're in this world where everybody around you gets to do all the things, and they get to eat all the things, and they have the cereal and the cinnamon rolls and all the delicious treats and birthday parties in school. And you are in a position now where if you have that, your brain is going to get sick again, and it's going to be really hard. And so I asked you the question, do you feel sad or jealous that you don't get to eat those things anymore?
Nope. You know what I think? Whenever I see it, all I think is poison. And what do you think they're my illnesses? And also, if I go to a birthday party, I'm grabbing cheesecakes. I'm taking cheesecakes from Hippie Chicks.
She's found some keto treats she likes. She knows she comes prepared.
Okay, these sound really good.
And don't tell my dad, but I'm making him a pumpkin pie cheesecake.
That's very nice of you.
His birthday is right after Thanksgiving, so.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and at the time of this recording, it's, well, to you, it's just Thanksgiving. To us down here, it's Canadian Thanksgiving, but that's just this weekend, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It is.
Monday.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
And like today, when I looked at, like, my teacher, she has, like, national stuff every day. And today, National Mental Health Day.
It is Mental Health Day today. You're right.
Wow.
And I tried, and I was like,
it's really strange living in a world that is functioning differently than you are.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, it feels kind of isolating, but it also, yeah, feels totally different. Well, she just stepped out, but Genevieve, thank you so very much for your story. I just like, what?
She's just letting the dogs out.
just Uncle Matthew.
You just say, "Are you all done? You gonna sign off here, or what's happening, kiddo?"
Nothing.
All right, you go do that, and I'll finish talking to Casey.
Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you so much for chatting. What do you say? What do you say to that? I'm like gonna like start bawling. How do you just sit there and like listen to your daughter like just like blossoming in front of your face? It's incredible.
So this summer was it was beautiful because I got to spend more time with her because school was out. I got to actually watch her literally flourish. I took her with me everywhere, got to talk to all the people I'm talking to, and she got to tell her story to these people too. And it's such a beautiful thing to listen to her talk about it from this side of it now. Because when she was in the throes of it all, she didn't want to talk about it. We very much wanted to just like get through the day and hope that the next day might be better. But she's processing it now and she's talking about it very honestly and openly out loud. And I see the ripples from it. It's a beautiful thing to watch her at 12 years old recognize that her body was not chemically imbalanced, that it was dysfunctioning, and we were able to pinpoint those dysfunctions with nutrition and nature and the things that we forgot we really make us human. And I love listening to her talk about it with the same kind of passion that I obviously talk about it with. She's definitely my mini me running around talking about these things right now. She's listening and she's listening well. All of my family is. They make me so proud.
As always, thank you so very much for listening to Boundless Body Radio. As 2025 has come to a close and we are starting another new year, I always try to reflect on the direction that we want to go in the future and also how we have grown in the last year. Our podcast now includes over 900 episodes and has generated well over 600,000 downloads all over the world, and it's all thanks to fantastic listeners like yourself. I hope you are as excited for the new year as we are. The lineup of guests that we have coming on is staggering, and we are always striving to continue to bring you the best content from the most amazing people in health, nutrition, and wellness. Remember that you can always head on over to our website to book a complimentary 30-minute session with us at myboundlessbody.com. On our homepage, there is a Book Now button where you can select a time to speak with us about your health and fitness plan, especially for the new year. We've loved chatting with so many of you out there to bounce ideas off each other and try to come up with plans to help achieve specific goals. And seriously, as always, even if it's just to say hello and introduce yourself, we absolutely love connecting with our listeners in the community. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel if you want to watch these full interviews and also shorter videos on more specific topics that are taken from these interviews. We've gotten great feedback over there. It's also a fun way to interact with people who comment. We read and reply to every single YouTube comment we get, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave as many comments as you like. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. It really is the best way to make sure that the podcast gets out to more listeners. Your 5-star ratings and reviews are the best way to support us here at Boundless Body, and it only takes a second and is extremely meaningful to us. Cheers to 2026, and thank you again for listening to Boundless Body Radio.